Well, again, happy Sunday morning or afternoon, wherever you happen to be. It's a pleasure. I'm so excited to do this. I really am. And to see all of you, as I mentioned, cameras are optional, but if you can keep your camera on, that's great. I would like you to all unmute or mute yourselves. And so, barking dogs and people in the back room banging pots and that stuff doesn't come through. I'd like to begin with an opening meditation in a few minutes. I'll have a lesson for the day today, something to lay the foundation of what we're going to be talking about every Sunday, ongoing, with a few exceptions. I have a medical procedure I have to go through soon, and so there may be a week here and a week there that we don't have class, but that'll be announced in advance. I have created a special email list for all of you, so it'll be easy to stay in touch with you. Let's see, what else did I want to tell you? Again, it'll always be free, and it'll be not only spiritual but personal development. And I've got a, I mean, it's not easier to take all that I have to offer you and put it in a linear 1, 2, 3 kind of an order, because it really is so multi-dimensional. But I'll do my best to do that. And so at times it may seem like we're jumping from the personal development to the spiritual development, which we could also call transpersonal development. But hopefully, because the majority of you have listened to me before, some of you have been in seminars going back years and years. And so a lot of this information will be familiar to you. Let's see, no tests, no quizzes. Oh, we will do Q&A toward the end. I think that's the part I wanted to mention to you, that at about the 60-minute mark, at that point, we'll unmute you. And if you notice, if you're not familiar with Zoom, there is, or should be, in the lower toolbar, a reactions button, and you can find a raised hand there. I suspect if we have 40, 50 or more people, probably be a good idea to use that raised hand button. I'll acknowledge you. And what I'd also like to do in the future is breakout rooms, where we'll assign you breakout rooms of 2 or 3 people, and we'll do some dyads or triads, short discussions, and then come back and have some dialogue around that. So approximately 2/3 of each of these 90-minute sessions will be me offering you instruction and information, and then the last third will be interactive, and we'll be able to engage with each other and get to know each other and share emails if you wish, and create some friendships and relationships out of this as well. I'd like to begin by telling you a little bit about me and how I came to this whole field of not just radio, because my background, of course, is that of a broadcast journalist. I studied journalism in college and graduated with a degree in television and radio and a minor in journalism. I taught journalism for a while at Mount San Antonio College out in Walnut, California, near Pomona. It's right near Cal Poly. And thought I'd do journalism all of my life, but the truth I was looking for, I realized, was not to be found in the news. It was not to be found in government and politics. And so I started studying psychology, and in particular hypnosis. I bought my first book on hypnosis with a coupon that I clipped from the back of a Superman comic book when I was 12 years old. I don't think it was a very good book on hypnosis. I don't remember very much about it, but some of you may be old enough to remember a TV program called Art Linkletter's House Party. And this must have been the early 1960s. I saw a hypnotist on Art Linkletter's House Party and was fascinated, absolutely amazed that there was such a thing. And so by college, I was reading books on hypnosis and transmediumship, books like Edgar Cayce's books and the autobiography of Edgar Cayce. And then I read Jane Roberts, who was also a transmedium, and she channeled this fellow named Seth. And I was just fascinated by altered states. And what I came to realize, and the point of me telling you all of this, is that hypnosis led me to mind science and an understanding that most of us are pre-programmed to some degree, some of us a lot more than others. If someone would learn that I am a hypnotherapist or I work with hypnosis and they say, are you going to hypnotize me? My comment was usually, no, you're already hypnotized. I'm going to unhypnotize you. I'm going to wake you up. And that's core Buddhism as well. It's I'm going to wake you up. The irony is that we go in the direction of sleep to wake up. That there's a center or a balancing point in the alpha and theta brainwave levels where we are more aware. You've heard the phrase expanded awareness. You've heard the phrase higher consciousness. That does not exist out here wide awake and stimulated by our senses and sensations. We're at our best in terms of focus. I hesitate to use the word concentration because that sounds like an effort. And concentration is actually a relaxation skill. But also just our ability to gain profound insight and understanding comes from finding this balance point between awake and asleep, sort of hidden away, such that, again, we have to move in the direction of sleep to wake up. And then we realize slowly just how programmed we have been. And this leads to all of our problems and all of our heartache. Imagine that. It's quite profound to consider, I think, that the problems that we've been educated and enculturated to believe exist in the world are actually problems only because of the way we perceive them. In other words, the problem is actually inside us. Someone else, for example, in the same situation might not see that as a problem at all. They might see it as an opportunity or even a blessing. What a wonderful thing, and yet we find it horrific. It's a problem that needs to be solved, and we rush out into the world to try to solve it. And what we need to do is turn within, wake ourselves up, and understand what it is that we don't understand. For every problem and every heartache is rooted in anxiety, stress, or fear, which is simply the feeling of not understanding. If you've read my book, Fearless Intelligence, you know the main premise is that fear almost never has anything to do with danger at all. That Fear is what we don't understand. All fear is fear of the unknown, whether dangerous or not. How often has someone said to us, hey, Michael, what are you worried about? What are you afraid of? And I have to admit, I don't know. And of course, that's the point. That's what fear by any name is, whether it's mild apprehension and just a little nervous or slightly concerned, all the way out to panic attacks and phobias and some sense of horror. All of that is imagined, of course. So again, it's within us. If you didn't like a movie and you wanted to edit the movie, you wouldn't rush to the movie screen and try to manipulate the images of light on the screen. If you understood the nature of a film, you would turn and go to the projection booth behind you and edit the film there. And that's what I'm talking about. This is incredibly liberating. And at first, when presented to people, it may sound like a burden to say every problem is our responsibility, from the ones that are clearly personal to the enormous problems like global warming or war or poverty and income inequity. Hey, I'm not to blame for that. Racism. I'm not a racist. I didn't do that. Well, but are you an anti-racist? You're not fighting wars. You're not a violent person. But what are you doing to wage peace? So it's not a matter of self-blame to take responsibility. It's a freedom. That's where your power is. And every time we blame or hold others responsible, we give that power away. And so a big part of what this class is about is liberating ourselves as well as waking up to the extraordinary power that we have to make a difference, not only in our lives, but in service to other people in the world. And I'd like to emphasize along the way some really practical and portable tools and techniques that you'll be able to use in your life to demonstrate that it matters what you care about. It matters the way you think. It matters what you place your attention on and dwell upon and even obsess over. So having said that, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. How about if we do a little opening focus here, some short, brief meditation. It's a chance for me to put in a plug for short meditations. I like 15, 20-minute meditations. I think they accomplish every bit as much as a 1 hour or 3 hour meditation or a 12-hour meditation. Some of these retreats seem quite intensive. Those are life-changing, but even 2 or 3 minutes is a benefit. If you've ever played a sport or practiced a musical instrument, you know that more times helps you learn faster than more time. Better to meditate every day for 5 minutes than once a week for an hour and a half. It's repetition, it's consistency and persistence that matters. So you got to call yourself on that. When that voice in your head lies to you and says, I don't have time to meditate. I'm way too busy. I can't be doing that. Well, someone once said, if you have time to breathe, you have time to meditate. And don't underestimate those 5-minute meditations. They're real valuable. Let's do one now, okay? So all you got to do is get comfortable, sit in your chair, and put your feet flat on the floor. And open up your rib cage, put your shoulders back, and think about yourself as sitting erect but not rigid. We want to relax. It's very important to release muscular tension. So think of yourself as balanced and centered with your feet flat on the floor. And close your eyes. That alone reduces brain activity by about 80%. with your eyes closed, just feel the chair supporting you. Feel the floor beneath your feet. Imagine that you're rooted. How would it feel to be a tree or a flower or a blade of grass, to have roots that grew into the ground? And then just imagine, what if roots went down through your shoes, your sandals, through the carpeting and the tile, down through the floorboards and into the earth? And you felt plugged in, and you felt grounded, and you felt connected, as if this is where you grow, and you belong here. And let go into that feeling. Again, allow the chair to support you. You don't have to hold your body together or cooperate with the chair. And to facilitate that relaxation, let's do a couple of nice, slow, deep breaths, inhaling slowly through your nose, as if pulling in strength and power. Pause as you peak, and then in your own rhythm, your own rate, exhale slowly. Pause for a beat, and then do it again. And as you exhale through the nose or the mouth, feel a letting go feeling, like a sigh of relief, a sigh of release. Pulling in power as you inhale, letting go as you exhale. And after 3 or 4 nice, slow, deep breaths, just let go of that and put your attention, your awareness, gently on the bottom of your nose. And watch your body breathing itself for just a few moments, all by itself. And identify as the one who watches rather than the breather. Do this passively, in other words. Do not engage your breathing. You could at any time hold your breath or increase the rate of respiration. You could pant. You could obviously exert yourself. But what if you just identified as the one who watches your body breathing itself? And we're sincerely curious about this miracle, this wonder that the body breathes itself without any effort on your part, and you simply watch. You begin by simply identifying and noticing the difference between an in-breath and an out-breath. That's simple enough. And the next step is to follow the breath from a fixed point on the bottom of your nose, but follow your body breathing in, all the way in, pausing for a natural beat, and then out again. Follow the breath with your attention gently fixed on a single point on the bottom of your nose, at the tip of your nose, or on that ridge line of cartilage between the nostrils, wherever you find it resting. Simply notice the breath spilling over the rims of your nostrils. and silently remind yourself every once in a while, I am not the breather, I am the watcher. I'm the observer. I am the witness. And then preparing to come back to the waking state. Move your awareness to the way the chair feels supporting you. Feel the floor beneath your feet. Bring to mind the room in which you sit. And tell yourself in a moment, you'll open your eyes wide awake, feeling great, rested, refreshed, restored, renewed, filled and full and fulfilled and all warm and radiant, feeling better than before. And take a nice, slow, big, deep breath, fill your lungs, and as you exhale, open your eyes, wide awake, back in the room, feeling fine, better than before. I turned off my phone so that it wouldn't ring, and now I have to find a better way to figure out what time it is. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that.
11:27.
Thank you. You sound like the lady at the telephone company. Remember, you used to be able to call the number and get the time? I'd like to begin. What is the beginning? Where do we begin with all of this? I'd like to begin with the whole idea that there's more to existence than meets the eye. How about that? That our senses and sensations deceive us. Oh, clearly we get extraordinarily valuable information from sense and sensation. The ability to see, imagine, the eye evolving. I heard scientists speak on this and the different stages the eye went through over billions of years in various creatures to become photosensitive and then to develop the sophistication, the complexity that the eye has. Although many animals have gone beyond humans. You know, the eye of an eagle or a hawk, to be able to see the tiniest little object from high above. And we know that your puppy dog at home can pick up a scent that is beyond our ability, certainly, to smell. And dogs can hear, you know, the dog whistle. They can hear sounds that are higher than 20,000 cycles a second, which is pretty much our limit of human hearing. And of course, bats use sonar, as do dolphins and whales, sounds that we cannot hear. So we have blinders on, you see. We're only getting a part of the story. Thinking in terms of the frequencies of color, that's a spectrum, just like the dial on your radio, with red at the bottom end of the spectrum, the lowest frequency, and violet at the highest frequency. Well, what is beyond violet? What is below red? There are colors, so to speak, that we can't see, sounds that we can't hear, sensations we cannot feel, much less tasting and smelling. Each of us, you know, has an entirely different experience of taste. Here, taste this, how's that taste? Ah, that's horrible. Are you kidding? That's delicious. I love that. So it is. But here's the point. We live in a world that appears to be a world of separated forms. When, if we simply recall grade school science or middle school science, we know that on an atomic level, the most solid object, iron, steel, titanium, lead, is actually less dense than a snowstorm. That these tiny little particles, these electrons and these protons and neutrons, and not to mention the subatomic particles, the quarks and the muons and these little particles that most of us know little or nothing about, that the mass that they represent, the size, the space they take up, is infinitesimal compared to the space between them. That an ordinary molecule of the most dense metal is 99.999% open space, more spacious than our solar system. If you could zoom in, you would see the distance between the electrons and their various shells as being greater than the orbits of the planet and the solar system. So what holds this damn thing together? Well, it's a combination of forces, but it's energy that gives it its strength. It's magnetic energy, electromagnetic energy, it's impact of gravity, there's centrifugal forces, centripetal forces. I don't pretend to understand it clearly, but I know it's not solid. And I know things that appear to have edges do not have edges. We live in a universe of energy. This may be Einstein's greatest contribution, is clearing up the question, what is the universe made out of? Well, he said energy and mass, but the mass is energy. The mass is impermanent. One of the great laws in Eastern philosophy is the law of impermanence. Nothing lasts. Everything is in flux. There's a famous saying by Heraclitus or Heraclitus that no person ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, they are not the same person. Everything is in flux, everything is in constant change, and in terms of that which is physical, nothing lasts. Our thoughts don't last, they fade away. Our emotions don't last, they fade away. The fulfillment of our desires don't last, as I'm sure you've noticed. They fade away, and then it's on to the next desire. Once obtained, it's pretty wonderful, but not for long. Pretty soon that appetite, that desire inside, lusts for something else. Whether it's a relationship or a physical object or, gosh, I haven't had pizza in over a month, whatever that desire is. Once satiated, it's on to the next thing. Nothing. In Buddhist philosophy, there are 7 sufferings, and this is one of them, the idea that your desires are never completely fulfilled, or if they are, never for very long. I should probably tell you what the other 6 are, right? The 7 sufferings in Buddhist philosophy are sickness, aging, death, and rebirth. Death and rebirth is one suffering. So sickness, aging, and death. And then losing what you have. You know, your dog died, your grandma, your parents, your friends. You got fired from the job. Somebody smashed into your car. I had a client whose partner smashed his guitar, broke my heart, and I'm sort of, guitar players and other musicians, I think, feel like their instruments are living beings. Our lives are full of loss. And then 6 is moving toward that which you wish to avoid. That's a suffering, having to face the pain of this or the fear of that. And then 7 is this idea that our desires are never completely fulfilled. So what do we do with that? Well, we learn to accept it. We learn that physical things are impermanent, as our desire nature, or the sense of fulfillment we get from it. And again, even thoughts and feelings pass. But the one thing that cannot be destroyed, the one aspect of this energy and mass that the universe is made out of that doesn't pass is energy. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So if we say the universe is all energy and physical stuff, the energy is the substantial part. Now, energy will degrade, it does transform. There are principles like entropy about energy winding down, so to speak, and eventually, hesitate to use the word degrading, I'm not sure that's the right term, but eventually it becomes heat. But one of the mysteries that we're going to talk about is how we can bring order out of chaos, how we can manifest out of that energy new forms, and in addition to that, refine states and conditions that are already in manifestation with the manipulation of consciousness. And I say manipulation in the best term, in the best sense of the word. So we're dealing with a universe of energy, and consciousness is energy. And consciousness is fundamental to all things. Quantum physics has made this clear. The mystics have been saying it from time out of mind. Consciousness or awareness is fundamental to existence. The brain does not produce consciousness. Consciousness produces the brain. Now, we're empiricists, and again, we're living in a world of physical form. And so that's why we call this mysticism. They're great mysteries. They're very difficult to comprehend. The brain is not made for understanding that which precedes the brain. It turns out the brain is a filter that focuses our awareness, that allows us to be selective. Sometimes we're not very aware at all. Even though we're awake, who hasn't found themselves sitting at a traffic light that's already turned green? You weren't unconscious, you were not comatose, you were not asleep. You were thinking about something, you just weren't thinking about traffic lights. But somebody had to beep the horn to get your attention and bring you back to the awareness of the fact that the light turned green. So awareness is variable. Again, our one of our principal goals in this class is to wake up, to become more aware. And let me speed forward to the whole idea that this class is titled The Wisdom of the Soul. There is an overshadowing aspect to us, a higher self, often called the soul. We'll talk about how soul and spirit are different concepts, different words. But I would have you consider that beyond what we've been told in our culture and in our Western religions about an indwelling soul that is born with original sin because Eve ate the apple and needs to be redeemed. And if we're good children, then we go to heaven, and if we're not good, we burn in hell. That perhaps your soul overshadows you now, stands above you. It exists within you, but it's also above and free of form. And we are an extension or a fragment or an element of that oversoul. And if that's the case, we ought to be able to communicate with it. We ought to be able to tap into the wisdom of the soul. Where do those ahas come from? When you get that great idea, the light bulb comes on over your head. And sometimes it comes in really slowly, right? Like the dawning of a great idea. Maybe it's a new idea. Maybe it's a conceptual understanding because you have a lot of data and little details, but you couldn't quite figure out what united them. You couldn't get the 30,000-foot view, the holistic, what do these things have to do with each other? I have a feeling that these are related, but I'm not able to see the whole package. And sometimes we get a whole set of new information, quite profound understandings that arrives like lightning and thunder and seems to blow your lid off, right? So, and then there's the archetype of the light bulb popping on. So whether it's the dawning, gradual dawning of an idea, the light bulb popping on, or being thunderstruck, notice the light. Very important that you notice the light, as in enlightenment. As if the answer were here all along, but it was in the shadows and you didn't see it until someone turned on the light. What if every problem that you ever had, including every heartache and all of our sufferings, were symptoms of an undiscovered truth that already exists within you? Let's take something as simple as peace of mind. I say simple, not easy, but simple. Inner peace is not something you attain. It already exists within you. It's waiting right there in the center of your being at all times, along with contentment and fulfillment and joy and bliss. It's always there. It never leaves you. But where does it go when we need it and it seems not to be available? Well, it's hidden in the shadows. How do I get to it? You turn on the light. Where do I find that light? By using deep relaxation and gentle mental focus to open yourself to the wisdom of the soul. And that may come to you, those answers, that understanding, that realization, in voices, whispers, the still small voice of the higher self. And when it reveals the information, oddly, it often feels like remembering, as if, oh, I knew that. I think I knew that. Gosh, it feels like I should have known that. Maybe at some time I did know that, and I'm just remembering. Or a teacher of mine used to say, recapping, recapitulating. Maybe from a previous life, who knows. But it is a feeling that many people are aware of when they get insight and understanding and revelation and inspiration. I like the word inspire, to breathe into, to conspire, to breathe with, to expire, to exhale. Spire, spiro, spirit. Spirit is breath, you see. Spirit is breath. Aloha is the breath of God, the ha. You know, the Jewish Bible refers to, in the beginning there was the Word. It's breath, you see. That's what spirit is. And that's what spiritual people or religious people or metaphysically oriented people call energy. Energy is spirit. And this physical dense stuff, this mass, this matter, is a manifestation of that spirit. In other words, spirit is the creator, the physical dense is the creation. This is no different than spirit and matter. This is no different than Einstein saying energy and mass. You see? And the mass is really energy, and it's an illusion that we think that it's solid and, I can knock on the table. Hey, that's solid enough. I can get in a car, and not worry about it flying off into pieces. It's solid enough. Same thing is true of time. Time is an illusion, but even the Dalai Lama wears a Rolex and carries a day runner because he has a meeting a week from Thursday, but he knows that now is the only reality. But it's real enough. By the way, in Eastern philosophy, this is called the Truth Doctrine, and we'll probably touch on this in the future, maybe numerous times. The idea that there is absolute truth and relative truth, and both exist. It's not an either or. You don't have to believe only in absolutes or only in relative truth. Your truth is different from my truth. Subjective truth, right? Well, does that cancel out the idea that there could be absolute truth? Or if you see an absolute truth, water boils at 212 degrees, does that mean that we disagree on when warm becomes hot? And no, that's not warm, that's lukewarm. Actually, this is cold. No, I disagree with you. I would call that warm. Both exist. The Truth Doctrine. It's a big relief to know that really intelligent people have figured this out, even though it may not have trickled down to us in our schooling. The absolute and the relative, the objective and the subjective. So this class, this free, ongoing Sunday morning Zoom class, every week with, as I said, a few exceptions when I may not be able to make it, is called the Wisdom of the Soul, because we're going to learn to wake up, to use profound relaxation, meditation, contemplation, reflection. Many of you would think of it as prayer, to access the higher self, the wisdom of the soul, this overshadowing reservoir of insight and understanding, so that we don't have to wait for a good idea. You can go there. You can stand open and receptive to wisdom and recognize that it's already there. What if you knew that the answer to every problem you have is sitting there in the shadows, just waiting for you to turn on the light, to ask, right? And the peace of mind and the contentment, the ease and the grace and the elegance, the fulfillment, the meaning and purpose of your whole existence, beyond earning and spending and producing and consuming, was always available. That the answer to every mystery is sitting there waiting for you to discover it, that the game is sort of rigged in a way. And that we are indeed in the image of the energy that manifests all things. And we can manifest, provided our priorities are straight. These principles of manifestation can be misused, and often are, when people use books like The Secret, for example, or maybe the movie, and similar books on the law of attraction, to manifest purely material things as if That's where your happiness will be found. If only I had the Maserati. If only I had the mansion. If only I had lots and lots of money. Hey, I know people with lots and lots of money. Many of them are happy. But there's just as many extremely wealthy people who are miserable. Look who wages war. Billionaires. I remember in the Iraq War thinking Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, all of them have hundreds of millions of dollars. All of them have grandchildren. They could be home playing with the grandkids. But instead they're waging war. Why? Money and power. Yeah, but they already have money and power. I guess it's like heroin. It's never quite enough. Again, we know that, but we live in a world where we have to sit down once or twice a month and pay bills. And I'm sure we all know the pressures of, various times in our lives where that's more difficult than at other times. These are real world concerns. So again, it's a matter of balance. It's a integration that we have to do to live in the world, but not of it. Isn't that a great line? You do have to live in a world of form. We do have to be aware of this two-truth doctrine. In fact, I would have you consider that any idea has some degree of merit. That instead of judging concepts or beliefs as either true or false, consider that everything is somewhat true and somewhat false. Maybe it's 99% true and rarely false, or the opposite. Maybe it's a 60-40 or a 55-45 or a 70-30 or a 30-70. You know what I'm saying? But again, what a great relief to get off I almost said bipolar, the binary either-orness of judgment. No, you're wrong. You have to be wrong because I know I'm right and you're different. So therefore you must be wrong because life is true or false, right? No, wait a minute. Didn't we have multiple choice? Wasn't there C and D and none of the above and all of the above and fill in the blank and essays? And no, the real world is not binary. But when we're stressed, when we're anxious, that amygdala kicks in, that amygdala hijack, we go to binary. Are you with me or against me? And out of that comes good or bad, right or wrong, winners and losers, all or nothing. There's a big one. All or nothing. And so next week, what I'd like to talk about is this concept, this binary concept, in terms of what is behind the universe. What is the creator? What is the source? What is the absolute? This consciousness, this awareness, this creative energy, as Einstein would call it, creative force, the creator with a capital C, God. Who is God? What is God? What does that even mean? And there are two basic versions. Here's that number 2 again. Based on our understanding of the number 1. And this is where we'll begin next week. 1, like so many of our words, has multiple meanings. There is a distinct one, this one, which is not that one, and it's not that one over there, and it's surely not that one, but it is this one. And this one is the only one, and that one is a false one. So the number one can mean this or that. And if I pick up this one, and that one, and that one, now I have 4 ones. I have 4. Yeah, but each one is a 1. You see what I'm saying? As opposed to 1 meaning whole, all that is, to the exclusion of nothing. The totality, this would be the capital O, 1. And so, throughout history, going back even to sun worshippers, the earliest primitive people looked up and they said, well, all energy comes from the sun. All life is supported by energy from the sun. Primitive humans knew this. So they worshipped the sun. Actually, not a bad allegory. And as far as they knew, there was only one sun. They didn't know that was a star. Just like we didn't know when we were kids that we were looking only at our galaxy. We thought when you looked up at the night sky, we were seeing the whole universe. It was much later, only 30 years ago or so, that we figured out, no, man, this is just our galaxy we're seeing with the naked eye. And there are hundreds of billions of galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars, such that it's beyond our ability to comprehend. Just in our lifetime, we figured that out. So the sun's a pretty good allegory for God, right? But here's the rub. Are we talking about monism or monotheism? And monotheism is found in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And I'm not going to tell you that it's wrong. I'm going to tell you that it's one way of looking at the creative force, the creator, the source of this energy, the source of this spirit, this breath. And that this idea in Western Abrahamic religion that there is one God. But because we live in a world of separated form, and we see ourselves as alienated, we often feel abandoned by a God that lives outside its creation. So we look at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and there he is, painted on the ceiling, reaching out from some other place. And we're told he hears our prayers. We can petition him. We can ask him for things. But often we get God confused with Santa Claus, and whether we've been naughty or nice, and whether we're going to get what we pray for, or whether there will be coal in our stockings. And this idea that God is remote and outside of its creation is a problem with monotheism that many attempt within these 3 religions to correct by saying, well, actually God is everywhere. And we'll talk more about that, this 3rd aspect of the Trinity. Monism, on the other hand, which is Eastern philosophy, Hinduism, which is 1,000 different religions, just like Christianity is 1,000 different variations. Hinduism was a reference to, well, Hindustan. India used to be called Hindustan. So the British coined this term, Hinduism, for all of these different religions based on the Vedas and the Upanishads and these ancient texts. Yoga, you wonder, well, is yoga Buddhist or is it Hindu, or is it like Taoism and Tai Chi, or what is this yoga stuff? Well, it's cultural, and it is found in all these different religious philosophies. And then, of course, Buddhism spins off of that, and there's Jainism and Sikhism, the guys that wear the turbans and wear the little swords. They have some great restaurants, the Sikhs do. their unifying philosophy is monism, the idea that there is one God, one source, but that it is inclusive. It is this universal electromagnetic cloud that embraces all things, and that everything is in this field of capital C consciousness or capital A awareness. And that awareness is everything, the one in everything and everything in the one. This is sometimes called Panentheism, and it's different from Pantheism. And again, these are concepts that we can get into in some detail when we're drilling down and it's more appropriate to dwell on that stuff. But these are the two basic philosophies. We honor and respect them all. It's for you to integrate, for you to choose. Let me say in conclusion, before we go to the Q&A, nothing I say is meant to be accepted as true. Nothing I offer you is carved in granite. It's to each of you as individuals to listen to what I'm passing on. Very little of what I'm telling you or will be telling you comes from me. It's coming through me from 50 years or more of reading, going all the way back to that first hypnosis book and the transmedium books I read, and the mind science books like Ernest Holmes' Science of Mind, and gosh, all those self-help and improvement books, James Allen, As a Man Thinketh, Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics, the Kabbalion by the Three Initiates. It just goes on and on and on. And I'm sharing this with you, and you figure it out. I'm not holding this out as truth, right? At least not capital T truth. Let it be small t truth. And then you guys figure it out. You knit together your own philosophy. See what resonates as true for you in your heart and in your mind, what makes sense. And I would hope that any discussion that we would have would not just tolerate, but seek out and embrace and respect divergent opinions and alternative points of view. That's the energy, the attitude that I'd like to bring to this. I'm not a preacher, I'm a teacher. And I'm going to pull on countless sources, and there's all kinds of, it's not conflict so much as it's variations and different hues and shades, right? You know what I'm talking about. So that pretty much lays the foundation. Again, next week I'd like to talk about this miraculous threeness of things, the Trinity or the Trimurti, which begins with the ultimate Trinity is cause, meaning, and effect. And I'm going to explain something that few Christians know. And the ministers and the rabbis and the priests and the what are they called in Muslim, Hinduism, imams, I believe. They know this, but they figure it's too complicated and too difficult to understand. And I don't think that's true. I think, we can understand it. And it's many, many different variations of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or Holy Ghost, of spirit consciousness in matter, and the way it's found in every other religion and spiritual tradition, Sat Chit Ananda, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the beloved, love, and the lover. And we're going to break this Trinity down. It's really cause, meaning, and effect, or spirit, consciousness, matter. It's stimulus and response, and the mystery is in the middle. The secret is in the center. It's that point of perception, of consciousness, of understanding between spirit and matter. That center is the heart. That center is emotional intelligence. That center is the soul. And that's where the wisdom is found. Wisdom of the soul is almost redundant. Wisdom is heart and soul. It's not the mental nature. It's emotion and spirit. And it occupies it's the sun aspect in Christianity. It's the Christos, or the Buddha nature. And it stands at the interface of spirit and matter. And I got a document that I'll share with you on screen next week. And we'll break this thing down and play around with it and read it not only horizontally. I think of Father, Son, Holy Spirit as horizontal, left to right, right? Proceeding, emanating left to right. But we'll also read the vertical columns. Like when you see all the different versions of the Father aspect and all the different versions of the Mother aspect, or the mater, the matter, the madre, the material world, and then right down the middle, all the different aspects of consciousness or love or wisdom or truth. That's when you start getting the big picture. So we'll break the one into three. 1, 2, 3. Next week we'll do the sacred 1, 2, 3 of things. And you can ponder in the meantime this riddle. What comes third stands as number 2 and makes the 3 a 1. That's your riddle for the week. What comes third stands as number 2 and makes the 3 a 1. Right? Not this one or that one, but all one. The one thing, the one life. Okay? As Rod Serling would say, submitted for your approval. Okay, so if you guys would use the hands raised in the reaction button. Wait a minute, is it called reaction or what's it called? Yes, reaction button. We can unmute you, or you can, I don't know. I'm not that clear on Zoom yet, still learning Zoom, so maybe you can unmute yourself, or Hannah will unmute you.
Sure. The raise hand selection is under reactions, and you should be able to raise and lower your own hand and unmute yourself, but if you have trouble, I will help.
All right. Well, if they have trouble, how would you know?
Well, they will have raised their hands and be speaking, but we will not be able to hear them.
But on the left of the screen is an unmute mute button. It's right on the left, down the bottom of where Michael's talking. Look to the left and you'll see mute or unmute. And that's how you can do it. Just click on that.
Sometimes we have the ability to override that and unmute everybody.
Yes, that's right. You have
but
to
obviously
Q&A, you've got to unmute.
Yeah, obviously that's working for you. Nice to see you, Rosemary.
Yes, you too.
Do you have a question or a comment?
Me?
Yes.
Yes, I do. If I am thinking about this whole thing with Putin, because it's really a distraction for this country, which has things that it's got to do, voting particularly. But aren't the rich, the people like Putin, aren't they just into replenishing their coffers as far as their investments in the arms industry? Isn't that what invading, using your weapons for the US or anywhere else? Isn't that what it's just about? War is about replenishing your vast arms investments in weaponry.
Is the word you're saying Putin?
Putin. You call it Putin. His name is the head of Russia.
Okay, that's my question. Is that what you're talking about? Okay, for the context of this class, I must respond by saying whether it is war whether it is money, whether it is power, whether it is patriarchy, it is all born out of fear and ignorance. For the purposes of this class, and, with all respect to you for the way you've asked the question, I could give you a political answer. I could give you the answer of a journalist. I could answer it in the context in which the news treats it. I could give you a simple yes, of course, to your question. But given the nature of this class and trying to understand the human condition, the predicament of these gross injustices, not only war, but, my God, racism and misogyny and income inequality and just on and on and on, all of it is born of fear and ignorance, and the antidote to that is love and understanding, and that comes out of a peaceful state of mind. So we're addressing all of this by trying to be the people we wish others would be, to discover the peace inside us, which leads not only to happiness and is necessary to personal happiness, which time we give up our desire to control other people and wish instead to contribute to their happiness, because nothing is more fulfilling. All the money, all the power, whether it's, United States imperialism or Soviet imperialism or Chinese hegemony, all of that is false. It's part of this delusion I talked about, where our senses are telling us that these physical objects are real. And we are these cogs in this giant machine, earning and spending and producing and consuming. And people say, oh, it's just the Matrix. Yeah, well, it is. We're playing that game. We do have, obviously, bills that need to be paid. If we're not gardening, we need to go to the store to buy groceries and canned goods. We have got to pay bills. So we need to live in the world. We can't just take a begging bowl and live in a cave. Some are able to do that, not very many. Somebody's got to go to work. So I think, again, in the context, Rosemary, of this class, I've got to address these kinds of real world concerns from the root, which is how do we address fear, the ignorance that produces fear, and given that fear then is confusing and produces more ignorance, how do we break out of this vicious cycle? The snake eating its tail, the Ouroboros, that vicious toilet flush downward of ignorance leading to more fear and more ignorance and more fear. And we do that by finding the love and understanding in quiet and peaceful states. And then the light bulb comes on. Now, again, in the real world, how do we address that? I don't think we can expect our leaders to go to Russia and say, chill, you just need to meditate, find God, whatever. It's got to come from the ground up. It's got to be 3% of humanity and then 5% of humanity. Where is that critical mass where enough human beings are conscious that the leaders have no choice? It's a long process. Evolution is excruciatingly slow. But that's my response to your heartfelt concern
Thank
about
you, Michael.
war.
I thought that was marvelous, a marvelous response. Thank you.
Thank you. In your meditations, people, something you can do, which, again, I understand that this may sound silly to some, but all I know is that it works. It works for me. I cannot insist that, again, this is capital T truth. But a wonderful technique for visualizing peace in the world and doing it from a place of a peaceful sense of self is to imagine sitting next to a lake and watching the waves and the ripples on the lake during a meditation become quiet. Smaller waves, less disturbance, and you will feel yourself changing until the surface of that lake or that pond is as smooth as glass. And you will feel that in yourself, that calmness, that peace. And then sense yourself as a radiant being. It's like a suggestion that you're offering the world. You are, instead of radiating your fear, emanating your worry, which even the Christian Bible talks about spirit proceeding forth from the creative source through us. We are the co-creators and out into the world. Instead of emanating our personal fear and our concern from a place of high anxiety, you send that peace out, and it's just like letting go. The feeling is letting go. Just create that sense of the glass lake, and then send that to Ukraine. Send that to Russia. Send it to everybody you love who is ill. Send it to all the animals. And don't forget the insects. I have a teacher that always says, don't forget the insects. Better said, remember the insects. They're sentient beings too, and they suffer. Send that desire, better said, aspiration for peace and harmony out into the world, and feel a letting go. And you may never know to what extent that changes things. But as more and more of us become peaceful people, it ought to be clear to the most skeptical person that at some point we hit a tipping point or a quantum leap where it would just be impossible for people to be unjust. It's not likely we'll see it in our lifetime. But our kids and our grandkids and their kids, it's getting better. It's getting better all the time. It's just so slow. Hannah, do we have anybody else with a hand raised?
Yeah, we do. Vanessa has her hand up, and also I've gotten a couple private messages. One person is wondering if you can repeat the riddle, and Monica wants to thank you for providing this space. And yeah, that's it.
I can repeat the riddle. What comes third stands as number 2 and makes the 3 a 1. Answer next week. Tune in next week.
And then Vanessa, did you have a question? Oh, and I'm sorry, I guess people are not able to maybe chat with you. Haley also wanted to say that she loved the visual of fixing the film inside the projection room versus on the screen. That is so helpful and also helps make life easier. You don't have to control what you are seeing, but just focus on the inside.
Thanks. I appreciate you reading those for me because it's hard for me to read without zooming into the screen, and you're doing a great job co-hosting, Anna. Thank you. And Haley, thanks for that. And I repeated the riddle. What else, Vanessa? It's the animal nature. And Carl Jung called it the shadow. And it is part of what needs to be redeemed. In, again, Abrahamic religion, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, This is called salvation. Alchemists called it purgation or refinement. But we stand between our animal nature and our divine nature. And consciousness or awareness is the choice in our daily lives of which way we're going to go. If we're reflexive and unconscious, if we counsel fear, we go toward the animal nature. And I don't want to give animals a bad name. We all love animals, but, we love animals that are domesticated, and we respect animals that cannot be domesticated and are dangerous. They're beautiful. They're part of the life system. They're to be respected and honored, but they're still deadly. And so don't try to, pet a pit viper or a rattlesnake. Don't try to cuddle up to a rhinoceros. They're animals, and that's what I'm talking about. It's fight or flight. I'd like to address this in greater detail in the future, but I'll just say that what we call a gut feeling, Vanessa, is actually a polarity of intuition and instinct. Instinct is the animal nature. It's fear-based. It's in the pelvis at the base of the spine. It's, oh no, run away. It's the shadow. It's the fear. It's capable of doing some very selfish, self-centered, and downright evil things. Okay? We all have that. When you're in real danger, though it may be exceedingly rare, that's going to kick in and take over. The upper end, if you will, the positive end, so to speak, of the bar magnet that we call gut feeling is in the heart area, and that's intuition. This is love-based. This is oh boy and what to move toward. In between is a whole magnetic field of feelings that are a blend of oh boy and oh no. A blend of light and shadow. All the colors of the rainbow. And all the come hither, go away. I want some of that. Oh, not too much. Oh, I want to go here. Well, be careful. Moderation in all things is the way the Greeks would talk about it. Balance. Center. Right? It's behind the navel. That's why they contemplate the navel. Right? The belly button window. So we all have a shadow. We all have a dark side. We're all capable of doing horrible things. Some people yield to that. Some people devote themselves to that. Some people are just cynical and figure, well, everybody's corrupt. If everybody's cheating, lying, and stealing, I want mine. So I'm going to cheat, lie, and steal too. I'd be a fool not to. But there also is a divine nature in us. There is a Christos, a Buddha nature. This is what Christ said, I am the way. Didn't say he was God. He said, I am the way to God. I am the way to your divine nature. He said, become like little children. He also said, ask and you shall receive, knock and the door shall be open. See, we're never alienated or separated from our wisdom, from our divine nature. And here we are dancing in the center between the light and the shadow, between the good and the evil, between the best of us and the worst of us. So yeah, be the awareness that chooses which way to go and when to go there. And again, if you turn down a dark alley and all of a sudden there's a rabid dog there with its ears pulled back and baring its teeth, you want that shadow nature to come forward, right? You're going to need it to run like hell. But you don't want to go up and pet that dog. But, life is complex. And the idea of standing in the middle and integrating those two pulls while ultimately aspiring to move upward, to climb that spiralic stairway to heaven, Jacob's ladder, moving on up like the Jeffersons. Every day.
Well,
moving up.
I think of it. It's and I don't know why it just took you talking about it for me to remember that, you know, as I heal those parts of myself, as I address my own inner conflicts on different issues, it sends out energy to the world that helps the world to resolve its conflicts.
Yes, indeed.
And
Yes.
I really need to connect with that awareness, because I need to be empowered to feel that, the empowerment of that, because it really sucks to feel powerless.
You know, and lonely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and surrounded by people who, for the most part, don't care, or if they do, they don't know what to do.
Yes, they're scared.
Yeah.
Most people are scared.
They're
Have
terrified.
no idea that any part of them can participate in healing themselves and the world.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that, you know, I can't ever meet Putin and say, hey, like you said, you know, chill, you know, you're lovable in some way, but I can feel
I have.
that part of me.
It's almost 12:30, and I want to close the class, but I have a great story along those lines to finish with, and then I'll have a few words before I let you good people go. This is a story that Timothy Leary told me, and I don't think he ever put this in a book. He never said this on my radio program. It was in private conversation that he told me the story of the first time Allen Ginsberg ever did LSD. So would you guys like to hear this? We all know who Allen Ginsberg is, right? As Timothy told the story, they were in New York at that, I'm trying to remember doesn't matter the name of the place. I thought it was, trying to remember. He was there with Richard Alpert, and Kesey and the Merry Pranksters came by, and I think it was in Woodstock, New York, actually, but long before the festival by that name. They had a mansion that they were living in that some rich young kid had let them have the run of, and they were doing these enormous quantities of pure laboratory Sandoz labs, just pure LSD. And they were drinking it out of mason jars, trying to discover if there was a dose at which there would be any ill effect other than, you know, losing touch with reality and a psychic break and extreme paranoia. And anybody that's ever experimented with real LSD knows that it mimics schizophrenia. There's no doubt about it. You become insane. But the clarity, on the other hand, is what's amazing about it. College and my experimentation in those days was the first time I separated awareness from thought. And I sat there like blithering and out of my mind, knowing that my thoughts were insane, that this is how schizophrenia feels. And hallucinating like crazy. But the clarity, everything was so lucid and so profound and so exceedingly beautiful. And how could these situations coexist? How could my thoughts and feelings be so scrambled and my sense and sensation so mixed up, you know? I was watching the walls breathe, and I had an embroidered tapestry, and the horses embroidered on this tapestry were running around the outside of the tapestry, and music was spilling out of the speakers in colors. So here's Ginsberg on his very first acid trip doing some enormous industrial hit of LSD. Timothy, as he tells the stories downstairs with Dr. Alpert, who, you know, later became Ram Dass, Baba Ram Dass, be here now. And they're all just wasted. And Ginsburg comes running down the stairs and he says, we've got to call them. We've got to get them on the phone and just call them. And he's going a mile a minute, and Timothy guides Allen Ginsburg over to a chair and sits him down and says, Allen, it's okay, relax. What in the world are you talking about? And Ginsburg says, Kennedy, Khrushchev, Kennedy, we just got to call him on the phone and explain it to them. The war is madness. It's just so insane. There's absolutely no reason for us to be in Vietnam. And, of course, what was so beautiful about the story is the innocence and the naivete that came rushing forward to this man, this creative genius, this guy who's I won't get off on a tangent, but his own sexuality was all mixed up and all messed up. Allen was a very complex man, and for all of his brilliance, he had many, many failures, as we all do. I was just talking about the light and shadow in each of us. But I loved the story because it just was so patently obvious to him. It was just so clear that all he had to do was get John Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev on the phone and explain to them that this war was insane and they should just stop it right now. So that's what you reminded me of, and the idea is, yeah, we can't just get Putin to, frankly, I have no idea why Putin is doing this. But I think part of the process is we're being conditioned for another Cold War because it's just so damn profitable. There is a plan to spend $1.7 trillion on a whole new generation of nukes when 5% of the ones we already have would create a nuclear winter that would put an end to all life. And you would think enough would be enough. So that's it, gang, for today. I've enjoyed this. I hope you have. Again, the universe is energy and matter. It's spirit or energy and mass, spirit and matter. And the former is the substantial part, the energy, the spirit, and everything proceeds forward from that, including consciousness itself. And next week, I'll show you this little document I have that, in fact, maybe I'll attach it to an email and send it to you guys so that you can look at what must be like 20 variations of the Trinity and get a better understanding of how the one proceeds forth to create, to manifest this physical dense universe, and then to plump us as conscious sentient beings right in the middle between spirit and matter. Yes, we have material bodies, but we are spiritual creatures of love and light inhabiting these bodies. We are both. Remember, Christ was referred to countless times as not only the Son of God, but also the Son of Man. The Bible refers to Christ as the Son of Man more than the Son of God. So the Christ nature, the consciousness that dwells in each and every one of us, our Buddha nature, is this consciousness. And it is, as Vanessa was just saying, a little of both. Light, dark, light and shadow, good and evil, spirit and reflexive, fear-based animal nature stuff. And which way do you want to go? Okay. So more on that next week. Thank you very much for being here. Namaste, peace and love. And I will send out another newsletter, not only the show notes for my radio show, but to this special list. We'll expand this group if you'd like, but I'll talk about that in a week or two. I want to grow slowly and stay with this group for now. I'm in no hurry to go further faster. And the link will remain the same. So if you just keep the link, that will not change from week to week. You can use the same link to come on board. But for the first few weeks, I'll mail it just to make sure you have it handy. Okay, you can always email me, by the way. I'd like you to use, if it regards this class, AW Mystery School for Ageless Wisdom Mystery School. Just awmysteryschool@gmail.com. awmysteryschool@gmail.com. I'll answer your queries and respond to your comments, and I hope to see you next week. Have a wonderful week, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank
Peace
you.
and love. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Say goodbye to everybody.
Thank you,
Anna,
Michael.
appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Hannah.
Michael.
Bye. Bye,
I like your
Steve.
background.
Thank you. I was wondering if you noticed.
Oh yeah, I've seen that a million times.
Do you see it, Michael?
That's the view from my deck.
That's Steve.
Yeah.
That's Steve's backyard.
It looks like Steve's porch. Oh, it is Steve. Actually, that is.
It is.
Absolutely.
It is.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Bye, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Steve.
Hi, Steve, and thanks for coming, Steve.